It's definitely a balance, I would say, because there's the analytical side that's kind of, taking a look at these systems, but they're all being told through these personal essays. And that's where the heart knowledge comes in. These are family members, these are friends, these are people that I have spent my entire life around, and some of it's my own reflection. And that's where the heart comes in, because these are very real, it's nonfiction. These are very real experiences, very real people. And it's reflecting on the good things, the not so good things that people have to overcome and experience. And so the heart knowledge, I think, fits into, in some ways, which is interesting, the heart knowledge almost fits into that idea of the Boolean logic concept a little bit more, because while I think that we all have this tendency to do the head knowledge about right and wrong, or like 1 + 1, like those figurative things, but something happens in the heart knowledge, right? That's where, and I like that term, heart knowledge and head knowledge. I really like that, Dave. So I'm going to use that one for sure.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I get to talk to authors, and I love it. It's a great thing. Start a podcast. You get to meet amazing people from around the world, get inspired, and it's great. So you listen, we record, it's fun. And today I got Morgan Christie on the podcast. We're going to be talking about our author journey. So much to talk about. It's going to be a great conversation. And I get to meet and talk to somebody who's completely amazing. So Morgan, welcome to the podcast. Glad to have you here.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Was that like the best intro ever? I don't know. I'm making it up.
I absolutely love it. It's just, it's perfect. Perfect in all the ways, in all the right ways.
Because you gave me a list of things to say, and I think I got them all there. Amazing, right? Perfect. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, no, it's great. So where are you in this big world of ours, Morgan?
I'm currently in Lafayette, Louisiana. I'm finishing off a doctoral program right now. I'm originally from Toronto, but I've bounced around a lot with school, with work,
Toronto,
just for a lot of different reasons. But so right now that's where I happen to be. But next week I'll be back in Toronto. So, yeah.
So Dr. Morgan?
It'll be soon, I guess so. I never think about that, but I guess it will be eventually.
Can I say this? Ready? Okay. Everyone listening, the doctor will see you now.
Oh,
there. I like that. Does that sound good?
Oh, it sounds so good. So good, Dave.
Okay, everyone. Well, the doctor's in the house. So if you're on a plane and anybody says, "Is there a doctor on the plane?" You'd be like, "Yeah," right? So
yeah, but
it could be a different type of doctor.
Different type, and unfortunately one that might not be able to help on a plane unless someone needs any linguistic help or something associated with English.
Exactly what we need, right? I can't explain what I want to say. Can you please help? Yes. So
love it.
So what kind of bonus prizes do you get by being a doctor? Preferred parking? Like, what is there? Any kind of amazing things that come along with the title? Come on.
Sadly, preferred parking is not a thing. Faculty still have to, pay and, deal with the parking pass, conundrum that everyone else does. So no, that's not one of them, but I will be able to hopefully get tenure and a professorship and all of those things that go along with it. And I can make my research of the things that I care about with writing and with all of the themes that I write about. I can make those a part of my curriculum, and I can try to spread and, work through those realms with students. And education has always been one of my first loves. I don't even think I told you about that, but I initially went into school for education. And so being able to converge this interest in English, in writing with now education, it's just felt like a really natural marriage in that sense. So I feel really lucky to have that opportunity.
And you're from Canada, so we have that as well as a bonus prize.
Yes.
That makes you super special, just so you know.
And likewise, it makes you just as special too, of course.
We're kind of like neighbors, which is kind of nice.
It feels like it.
Right? I love it. So again, congratulations in advance.
Thank you.
I know you're going to be amazing, and it's all going to fall into place. And cheering you on here from Ontario, Canada.
Thank you
that you're going to
so
do great
much.
things.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, so you have a very interesting path, and I feel like I need to sit up straight because I'm in the presence of someone who really knows their stuff. Take us back a little bit in your author journey. Mm-hmm. How does all this start? That, as a non-author, speaking to an author, I'm very curious on what that moment in time was where you're like, you know what? Writing and being an author is part of my future, and I'm going to start. How does that even begin? I'm so curious.
Yeah, well, I mean, I always had an interest in just, in literature and books and in writing. I did have an interest in that from, way, way, way back. But I honestly believe that the transition happened in school, which is something that I guess wasn't necessarily expecting. Like I told you, I started off as an education major. So I was, preparing to go get my, my teaching licensure and all of that. And I ended up just kind of taking as an elective, taking a creative writing course. And falling back into this love that I always had for, for books and for storytelling, for orature, for all of these different elements. And realizing, I guess, in that journey, kind of in that path at that point, that these things could converge, that you could find a way to actually implement those interests in writing and in authorship with education. And I thought, well, let me think about that as a career kind of along that line. And then you just kind of you realize that you have this opportunity to fall back into this interest with writing and to continue to be expressive, to think about the stories of your past, the stories that you have now, and to use them as this tool to educate, to inform, and to just, to engage with the world around you. And it just offers this really great opportunity to do it. So it really was an elective course in school. So I say it to my students all the time, approach all of those spaces. And whether you're in high school, I mean that if you're in high school, I mean that if you're in, post-secondary, use those opportunities, use those electives and go in with a really open mindset because you don't know what's going to spark, what's going to engage, what might reinvigorate something from your past. And approach it the way you would approach the things for your major, or the things that you think are kind of, at the forefront or of whatever journey that you have for yourself, because you might end up on a different path. And I definitely did. So I was happy that I approached it that way.
So it's one thing to study and learn about it. It's another thing to do it.
Yes.
So in the process of writing, what are you learning about yourself as you walk this path as an author?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that it specifically connects to like even the nonfiction, because this specific book is about nonfiction. I think there's a reflective and kind of retrospective quality that's just been maneuvering through so much of that. So I think in learning a lot about myself before, so thinking about the past, thinking about my younger self, thinking about the journeys and the trajectories that I've been on, I'm learning about a lot of what I do now. I'm learning a lot more about the decisions I make, maybe my perspectives, the way that I think. I'm learning about those things through previous actions or things that I've experienced, whether it's family, whether it's these kind of forms of cultural symbolism. In thinking back, and I think that that's a big part of what the writing process is, it's about reflection. And I've been talking about that a lot, specifically with the nonfiction, but this idea of thinking about the things that we've gone through and realizing that they continue to inform the things that we do and they continue to inform our thoughts. So yeah, I think that that's been a really big part of that process.
If an author had a superpower that they should tap into, what should they be tapping into? What do you think?
Ooh. I mean, that's tough too. There are quite a few, but for an author in any realm, whether this is poetry, fiction, nonfiction, like shifting into realms of journalism, I would say the power of observation and being just super cognizant of the fact that that really is a power, and to just be able to sit and observe. Of course, critical thinking, is a big part of, I would say even a part of that idea of observation, but to actually be able to sit down and watch and observe what is happening in the world around you, what's happening, whether that's in the home, whether that's in the neighborhood, or whether that's, through media resources. I don't know. But to actually tap into the concept of observing. And once you're able to observe and actually spend the time you need to really pay attention in that space, to allow everything else to kind of work its way out of you. And usually that's with the pen or the keyboard, whatever it is, but to observe first, knowing that we need to be observers before we can be anything.
And every Batman needs a Robin. So the Robin, I would think, would be your uniqueness.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're the only you.
Yes.
So X number of books are made every day, every year. There's a flood of content going into the world.
Yeah.
And there's people who write about what you write about. There's people who think about what you think about. There's people who do it better than you because they've been doing it longer.
Yeah.
They have more practice. You're brand new. And you're thinking, who would ever read my book?
Yeah.
Who would ever care about my thoughts or my words? But the only unique thing about your book, really, when you come down to it, is you.
Yeah.
Because no one's ever walked the path you've walked, met the people you've met, studied the courses you've studied.
Exactly.
A combination of everything that's taken you to get to this point makes you completely unique, and the only person who could write your book is you.
Yeah.
There is no one else in the world that could do this.
I love that.
So,
that's so true.
That superpower of the two, I think, is such a great combination that gives you the platform. And I think you could get confidence in the fact that no one else can write your book.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I've actually had students say that to me before. Specifically this semester, I'll say semester or year, I've done a little bit of touring and traveling with the book, and it's being taught in, different kind of university programs. And oftentimes students kind of approach things that way. Like, well, what makes you feel like you can write these stories? Like, people are talking about, themes that might, be similar to yours, or like what kind of propels you to keep writing when you know that a lot of content, exactly what you said, Dave, a lot of content continues to be pushed out. It exists in all of these different ways. Multiple people are talking about it. But it's what you said. It's that, well, your voice is unique to you and to these narratives, and no one's going to be able to offer that perspective except for you. And whether that touches one person or whether that touches a million people, it's just, you have to figure out in that process and in that way what your writing journey means and what matters to you, and trying to vocalize the things that you are. And, figuring out the reasons that you're doing it, of course, are a big part of that process. But your voice belongs to you, and nobody can take that. Like, I'll say, well, no, actually, I'll put it this way. When you start to get into the kind of commercial realm, I think sometimes people try to maybe have that altered a little bit. That becomes a real point of strife sometimes with writers. And I hear a lot of authors talk about this, that, when different editors' hands kind of get in the picture or marketing, I think maybe there can be some more influence in that space. But I think staying authentically you, like you said, in that particular realm is vital to what it means to utilize, your writerly voice. And
in a world of automation and tools that write for you.
Yeah.
We all have several things pop in our mind when we say those words.
Yes.
The humanity of what you write that comes from you as a writer might be duplicated or close to, but can't be really authentically you unless you write it. So
never. And I completely agree. Again, like just kind of maneuvering through this nonfiction that I've been talking about now. So one of the themes that I have a tendency to really lean on, specifically like gender equality in sports. It's a big thing for me. It's a big deal because I played sports. I grew up playing basketball. I come from a basketball family. I have a sibling who played tennis, but we're all just really big sports people. And so while I talk about these ideas of, maneuvering through the space of gender equality and all this, it doesn't just segue into sports. Yes, that's the element and the lens that I happen to be approaching this theme. But then, by the end of it, we're talking about something much broader, something that a lot of people can connect to, something that athletes can connect to, something that sports fans can connect to, something that, women might be able to. But realizing in that space that, oh, okay, I have this really unique perspective through different experiences that I've had, experiences that I might have seen my sister with, experiences my father has had, and figuring out a way to, again, blend and cohesively tell this story and this narrative, even though it's mine, can still ultimately connect to this really broader picture and something that is unique, And so I think in just accepting or acknowledging the fact that, your voice is yours and the uniqueness in that voice really mattering in that process, I think it helps along the way of kind of maybe not erasing the other voice, like why does anyone want to listen to me? Because I hear a lot of people ask that question, it's really, really common. But knowing that your voice, while it might be, one of a bunch in that space, it is still yours and it still belongs to you. And no matter what, that's the way it's going to stay. So.
Feels like a master class that we're having right now. And the longer this podcast goes, the smarter I'm getting. So my head's getting bigger and bigger as we talk. So thank you. You're educating. You're doing your thing. It's who you are.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
You're the one that, really stemmed in that idea of what uniqueness means in that way. So I appreciate it. So this is a team. This is a team effort here, Dave.
Whew, I got to step it up. Okay. I'm already winded. Okay. I'll try to keep up. Like we've danced around it. We haven't talked about the book specifically, the name of the book. What's going on? Let's start there.
Yeah, so BOOLEAN Logic, which was not at all what I was expecting to be the name of this collection, actually. The title stemmed from a conversation that I had had with my father decades ago when we were thinking about mathematical principles. But the idea,
Wow.
the idea really did stem in this concept of principles of a mathematic principle where sums might not always equate to something that was considered right or wrong. Like the sums not always equating to the means of their parts. It was this idea of things not always being as simple as, 1 + 1 = 2. That was it. That was the premise. And I learned about this in high school. And my dad was big into math and sciences, and I was not. I've always, like I said, always leaned more in the literary or arts realm. And so it was something I was doing to kind of be a quirky kid and be like, well, technically, according to this, this theory that I don't know anything about really, but it's not always that simple. And that's where the idea ended up being this sort of thread that connected the rest of the essays, because so much of them are dealing with, again, these really wide-scape themes and these expansive ideas about what experience means, what existing in different realms and different planes does, and things that are right or wrong not always being so clear-cut when it comes to different experiences and the things that people go through. So it just ended up being this thread that sort of cohesively tied together different themes from the rest of the collection.
Okay. So when writing, do you have someone in mind for this? Are you writing for an audience, or are you writing more from your perspective to yourself? Like, what's your framework? What's your frame of reference when you're writing?
I definitely think that the frame of reference is probably the same as it is with my fiction and poetry. I often try to think about, anyway, audiences or voices that I feel are, sometimes misrepresented or underrepresented in the literary world in general. And so whether that, kind of comes from my upbringing, like I said, I'm from Toronto, but I come from, parents that are born in Jamaica. So I have this, kind of unique lens of experiences that come from them, as well as myself being a first generation Canadian. So sometimes it's speaking to that particular realm. Sometimes it's, again, speaking to maybe, women or young women in sports that experience these particular elements that are difficult to maneuver through. But again, just trying to create some visibility amongst the sea, as we've talked about, the sea of voices that exist, but creating visibility for people that sometimes don't get to see themselves so often in the things that they read, because I felt like I didn't a super big amount when I was coming up. And that was something that I cared about, not only for young people, but for people our age as well, So just thinking about that realm. Yeah.
It was very kind of you to say our age, because now I feel a little younger now. That's good.
Of course.
But the one thing I see in podcasting is a similar thing, that people love to hear someone who sounds like, looks like, has come from an area that they've come from, because there's identity there. There's shared experiences, there's shared knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's amazing to have that. And as a middle-aged white male, there's a lot of us in podcasting, and I'm hoping for that to become right-sided and hear more voices, because the more the next generation can identify with thought leaders, people who put their content into the world and they can model and learn from and identify with, I think that's what we need more of. Not maybe in literary space, content creation, podcasting, music, whatever. Having somebody that we have a connection with because of a lived experience or a location, I think that's what we need more of. And is that kind of where you're leaning with your thoughts as well?
Oh, definitely. And I will say, like, even in being in this space with you, and something that I commend you for, it's that, well, I'm here, so in wanting to see, exactly, in wanting to see this forum of creating space and expanding. Like I said, I thank you for allowing these kinds of platforms to exist where you have people coming in from these different means, and we can connect in a lot of ways, and we might have different experiences, but we're here sharing the space together. And I think showcasing what we can do with, platforms like, content creation, with literature, and all of these realms. So I'm just at a point where I think we're seeing a bit of a change. I think in some ways we're seeing a little bit more of the constant idea of what representation means in some of these spaces, but I think we have a long way to go. I do believe we still have a long way to go. So this is why I love opportunities like this. And and this is exactly what I think we're taking steps towards when we create these sorts of conversations.
Does your book help us to identify ways to kind of change what's happening in the future and change the narrative? Is there something there to kind of give us a roadmap forward?
I mean, I think so.
Yeah.
I definitely think so. And a lot of it is based in some of that idea of reflection that we talked about, but mostly in being able to actually self-reflect and to think about our experiences from, some of these experiences being my own, some of them coming from other people, but to actually sit down and think about circumstance, to think about some of the particular experiences of some of the people in this narrative, or to think about systems and systemic concepts that exist around us in this way. But in really being able to stop, identify these things in the text, and to think about how we reflect on these, the same way that I'm trying to figure out how I'm reflecting on these through the text, I believe that's a huge first step in us actually being able to make those changes. Because once we stop and identify how we think about these things, we can figure out ways that we can maybe change or evolve in our own thought. And that's what a lot of the book is, really. It's about my own process of thinking through some of these elements and how I have changed, maybe in ways that I haven't changed. And I think that's what the book mirrors the reader to do as well, because it's a conversation. The book is ultimately a very, I would like to think, personalized conversation. It's not something that's riddled with a bunch of academia that, is going to be disconnected from people, because I cannot stand that. I know I'm in that particular field, but I'm very much so a writer of practice and for the people and for all people, if I can be. And so I'd hope that that idea of creating a conversational tone and having us all think about kind of the things that we've gone through, these systems that exist around us, I think that's a huge first step in actually thinking about how to change ourselves in the process of examining those spaces too.
Does your book kind of balance between head knowledge and heart knowledge?
Yes.
Is there kind of a back and forth in that, or is it
Yes.
lean in one direction more than the other?
It's definitely a balance, I would say, because there's the analytical side that's kind of, taking a look at these systems, but they're all being told through these personal essays. And that's where the heart knowledge comes in. These are family members, these are friends, these are people that I have spent my entire life around, and some of it's my own reflection. And that's where the heart comes in, because these are very real, it's nonfiction. These are very real experiences, very real people. And it's reflecting on the good things, the not so good things that people have to overcome and experience. And so the heart knowledge, I think, fits into, in some ways, which is interesting, the heart knowledge almost fits into that idea of the BOOlean logic concept a little bit more, because while I think that we all have this tendency to do the head knowledge about right and wrong, or like 1 + 1, like those figurative things, but something happens in the heart knowledge, right? That's where, and I like that term, heart knowledge and head knowledge. I really like that, Dave. So I'm going to use that one for sure.
Yeah, you can. It's yours.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm already borrowing it. So don't worry. You'll get kudos and props about it every time. But that idea of the heart knowledge, I think that's where we start to take pause. That's where things don't feel so based maybe in that head knowledge, because there is something that maybe feels not so clear. And I think we start recognizing that more so in the heart before we do in the head, even though sometimes you see it in that space as well. You feel it, I think, before you experience it in a different way, for sure.
So I think a lot of authors get stuck in the gap between the head and the heart when they're writing.
Yes.
And that gap seems to get bigger over time. And the more we can make that closer to each other, I think there's a kind of a blending that happens.
Yes.
If we can bring those two together. And that's my thought in all that is, how can we make that distance smaller between the two? So I think your book's going to be part of that solution.
I hope so.
See?
That's the genuine hope in that space, that there are enough questions, enough themes that we can sort of, close that gap in regards to our own reflection, in regards to the reflection of course, what we do in the world around us, but to actually stop and create an intimacy that, is really evaluating that space in between those. And I hope that, more texts continue to kind of come out to create that, to create that dissonance, right? To create that, that shrinking of the space in between those. So,
Well, I told you I'm getting smarter as we go, so you're helping all the way. Love this. Okay, so what is your your moment of satisfaction in the process of writing. Because for me, reaching a goal, reaching a milestone, such a satisfying experience. It makes you want to go for the next thing. But in the moment, you need to sit back and go, I did the thing that I planned to do. It's done. I've met that goal. What does it feel like for you as an author to be done that part of the process and then celebrate? How much time have you had to kind of contemplate the release of the book and all of that from your perspective? Do you find that satisfying, or do you find that to push you towards the next thing?
100% pushing towards the next thing. I actually have, this is a whole thing. This is a thing with my family, with my friends. I have a tendency to not, I think, stop and reflect on, and I've done it more this time because I've had to write some essays in response to the collection I'm doing, this podcast with you. So I think in doing that, I've taken the time to stop and, feel contented and really satisfied with the fact that, okay, so, I've compiled all of these because a lot of these were essays and articles that were in papers. This is something that's been, this collection, it had been kind of over years, it had kind of been done, and they were seemingly disparate pieces that all got put into one collection at the end. So I didn't really stop to have that moment. I guess to have that moment of like, wow, this seeing everything together in that way. I did it in thinking of a title because I had to come up with a title. So it happened that way, but not in regards to that sort of end goal element. And it's a really bad habit. And my parents especially my parents get very frustrated with me in that process because, I kind of go through things, handle things, accomplish things, and I don't necessarily tell them about it. It's just, because I'm constantly looking forward. It is. Yeah. It really. So when I finish that, it's like, okay, that's done. What's next? We got to that point. Now, what do we move on and do? And I don't always think that's a good thing. I will say, I think it's really important for us to actually reflect on, those positive things that we accomplish in that space and to use that to motivate us. But so I got a lot of motivation running through me. So I just sometimes I don't think about the reflection aspect in that way, but constantly moving forward. That's just always been an element. So that's what I find myself doing, Dave.
Well, the reflection part, that's my job, coming on the podcast.
Yes, exactly.
Slowing you down for a second and going, hey, you're an author, you're a soon-to-be doctor. Congratulations, celebrate. You've done something that a lot of people haven't done. So that's not bragging because you've done it. So I appreciate enjoy the moment. That's amazing.
Thank you, Dave. No, and I appreciate you giving me that moment because, it's just funny hearing you say it. And I have friends that say it all the time that, take some time to just celebrate yourself and the things that you're doing, because these were dreams, right? These are all things that started off as dreams. And again, thinking about myself, my much younger self, writing stories as a kid and doing that so I could, again, create that forum where people could go and see stories that resembled their experiences. And so to be here now and accomplishing that, to do that through my articles or through poetry or through short stories or novels, whatever the case, to do that means that I did meet some type of goal or a dream even. And I don't stop to recognize that enough. And so when you do stop, sometimes it warms you. It does. It really warms you and makes you feel good. So thank you for offering me that space right here, right now, in our space together. Thank you for doing that. Yes.
It's happening. The one thing I'm picking up from you as you speak is that community, family, very important to you.
Yeah.
You have some great people on your team, supporting you, loving you, pushing you forward, pulling you back. All of that's happening, right? Yes. So I know there's an opportunity for them to hear this episode and to hear you talk on this podcast.
Yes.
And I would love to just kind of move out of the way, and I'm not here.
Oh, okay.
And just your community's here with you.
Yeah.
And you have the opportunity, your best friends, your family, all gathered in one place.
Yeah.
To hear you speak or talk about your book. But your opportunity to address them for being with you through the process and what that means to you.
Yeah.
And just give you the microphone, and I'll just move out of the way here. But what would you like to say to your community, friends, family, those that have been with you? What would you like to tell them?
Well, I mean, it ultimately starts with the biggest, most sincere thank you that you can give anybody in that space. Because like you said, having community, having people that push and pull you, having people that support you. I think it's something that we can often take for granted, because when we're constantly moving forward and trying to, we forget that there are people sometimes that are that are with you in that way. And one of the things that I've appreciated later on in recognizing that is that the reason I have that gasoline, as it would, in the tank, the reason that I have that push to continue to is because I've had the support of, yeah, like again, this really great means of support in that process, in family and in friends, and yeah, and in community, and people that are just constantly wanting to uplift in that way. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being the anchor in my life, in the life of these stories, in these poems, in these essays, because without these, I genuinely don't believe we get to foster the voice that we ultimately have. You know, the writer voice is something that I think in some ways, of course, is individualized. Like there is a uniqueness to it, like we talked about, but it's also the accumulation of all of these other people. You know, it's the words, the wisdom, the love, you know, sometimes the strife of those spaces, but they foster and help us shape the voices that we have, that we now use these platforms for and expansively want to share with the rest of the world. So in my voice, I think there's a uniqueness, but I hope that there are, and I know that there are pieces of the people that came before me, people that are here with me now. And it just means everything. So I say it to my parents all the time, specifically, I say it to them, but you know, when we talk, they always talk to me about like, you know, that celebration or that, you know, that element of just being conscious or cognizant of that and participating. And I said, well, I mean, the way I see it is, you know, any of these opportunities, these platforms or these goals that we reach, it's not just me. I said, it's all of us, you know, they're yours too. And yeah, so getting to thank them and see them in the way that I always do. I think that's what I'd want to say, and what I am going to say, because I know they'll be listening to this. So thank you. Thank you always.
Nice. It's beautiful. One thing I'm curious about too is, as an author, I can imagine that a book can unlock opportunities, maybe that you weren't anticipating, or maybe that you were. Yeah. What are you hoping that the book does for you, and what has it done so far in the early release of the book, to the timing of the recording of our episode? Mm-hmm. What are you hoping for, and what has maybe already happened that's kind of encouraged you as you've seen the book go out into the world? What are you hoping, what doors you think are going to open because of the book?
Yeah, so I mentioned it to you earlier, but platforms and just getting this idea of having a wider reach, I think, is just always something that we appreciate in getting those opportunities. Being here, talking to you, it offers us these opportunities, and I hope that moving forward it continues to. But I think we're speaking to a lot of the themes in the book are things that are, you know, issues or concepts that have transpired since I was young, and there's still things that are so present and in some ways still very problematic now. And I think in having platforms and wider exposure to be able to actually address some of these issues will always be what I hope for in books like this, just so we can kind of start conversations and continue them and have them, again, work to expand across, you know, different opportunities. I don't want to only go into, you know, post-secondary classrooms and talk about this. You know, I want to be able to have these conversations with the world. I want to be able to share and get perspectives from other people, just like I'm sharing my own. So like I was telling you beforehand, I got a really great opportunity to do a small segment on NBC News and talk a little bit about some of the themes from the collection and kind of, you know, speak to some of what's happening in the world right now. And there's a lot happening. There is a lot. There's always a lot, but it just feels really weighted. And I think being able to have platforms where we figure out, again, this idea of self-reflection, and we figure out this idea of retrospect and how we can evolve in thought and as individuals, I think getting platforms to just advocate for that for all people will always be the primary goal for writing and for creating, again, spaces where we can share this sort of knowledge with each other and create community, create engagement in all the ways that even us talking right now gets to do.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I could talk to you all day. I know you have things to do, but I'm selfishly enjoying this, so this is great. I do want to close it off soon here so that you can get back to being a doctor, because that's the thing.
Dave.
Right? So let's talk about where we find you online and connect with you. I'm sure there's people that would love to be in your world and know more about you and the book, where we can get the book and where you're most active. How do we connect with you? And then I have a parting question at the end here that we're all going to stick around for because we want to hear more from you. But first, where do we connect?
Okay. Well, the best place to find me, where my email is, if you're interested in any of the books, is www.morganchristiewrites.com. It's the website. I'm not on all of the socials yet. I'm working on it, I promise. That has been a real process for me to have to kind of get myself behind, because I didn't realize how much energy and how much time it really took to be able to kind of consistently engage with social media. So, so like I said, the website is the big one, morganchristiewrites.com. And then I'm also on Goodreads, I'm on Medium. So I'm in a lot of spaces that you can find like authors and kind of author spaces, and those things are super accessible. But my email is on the website, and, feel free to just reach out, get in touch with me that way. I hear from people all the time, through email, and I am communicative in that way. If you have questions in regards to writing, know that you can come to me in any space, or if you just want to, share some of your process of, reflection and retrospect too, feel free.
It's amazing. Okay, so to end off, and you're very kind to reschedule. I had some stuff going on in my family. Very kind of you to do so. I'm very reflective right now where I'm at, in that I want to leave a legacy through what I do in this world.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important, and it's not talked about enough. And I think that what we put out into the world, we hope will come back in some form to us. But I'm curious to your answer to this question. If you were to leave the room of all of your people who buy the book, your friends, your family, followers, everybody that kind of in your community, you were able to walk out into the hallway, close the door behind you, and leave everyone there behind you, what would you hope that the people in that room would naturally say about you as a person, as an author, as a teacher? What are you hoping that they say about you when you're not in the room?
That she cared about us, and that I can see that in what she writes. And that us, I want to be as wide and expansive as possible, because I genuinely believe that care and empathy and observation and listening, and creating connections with people all over the world, whether or not they're people that come from the same community as you, whether or not they're people that are, directly associated with you via family and friends. It's knowing that we care enough about each other to know that, well, we all have something to say, and we all have something to be absorbed. We care and we matter. And having an author or having someone know that, I think, would be the biggest takeaway for anybody, knowing that, one, you can find yourself in some of these words, and that there's someone that genuinely cares about your story in the ways that you do, because there are people like that exist. We're here. We're here. And I think having someone and having everyone acknowledge and see that genuinely is something that drives all that I do, that would mean everything.
I love it. And I can anticipate that that's exactly what people would say about you. So
thank you, Dave.
I think you're already on a very good path. Continue on that path.
I will.
And as you become super famous, popular Dr. Morgan, again, that sounds great to say. It does sound really good. Remember us who were with you in the early days, who followed your journey and cheered you on.
Yeah.
Had you on their podcast.
I was just saying, yes,
right?
Of course.
And, yes, right. And we, speaking on behalf of your community, we're proud of what you've done, and we're here for you, and we want to see you do well. So we're cheering you on.
Thank you so much, Dave. And thank you for having me. This has been so wonderful. Oh, my goodness. This was so
Right?
great. Yes.
Right? I will send you the bill. Don't worry.
Yeah.
And we will settle up there. But again, I'm going to say it again because I love it. Dr. Morgan, thank you so much for being on my podcast. And thank you for making time to do this and for sharing your story. Continue to do so and do it more and share your voice as much as you can, because I think there's more people in the world. We need more of you.
Thank you.
There's only one you, but we need to duplicate you as much as we can. So by hearing your voice and being on the show and someone listening to this and being inspired, just by hearing you and being part of this,
Yeah.
I think you're going to help shape the future. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me, Dave. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Everybody, all the information in the show notes. Be sure to go out, buy the book, leave an amazing review, and tell 2 friends. And, gift giving season's coming up. Buy a gift and gift it to somebody. Come on, and leave a great review when you do so. Dr. Morgan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for being part of the podcast again. Appreciate you investing time in the show and you for listening this far. Thank you. One thing to keep in mind is we are looking for help and some support for the podcast. If you are able to help support our show, our little podcast show here, we can go over to livingthenextchapter.com and all the instructions will be there to help support the show. It takes about $30 to $40 a month to do this, just for the hosting and all of that other stuff that we pay for. But if the show is giving you any value and you're enjoying what's happening here, would love any kind of support that you can offer. That would be great. And you being here and sharing the show helps us grow. Helps us get great new authors on the show, connect with other listeners, and build community. So whatever you can do to share this show today, I really appreciate it. Thank you for being here for Living the Next Chapter, and I can't wait to share the next one with you. Talk soon. Have a great day.
Hey there, fellow parent. If you're anything like me, balancing screen time for our kids is a constant struggle. That's why I want to share a little secret with you, KidsPod. It's this amazing app I found that's packed with podcasts just for kids. Imagine stories, learning, and fun, all without the screen. It's been a game changer in our house, keeping my kids engaged and their imaginations running wild. And guess what? It's completely free. So download KidsPod today. Trust me, it's a decision you won't regret.